is there any opportunity in this shifting taste? I mean, let's take, this move towards whether it's, I mentioned psilocybins, CBD. We're seeing a broader array of options for people who want to feel good. And is that, do you see that as an opportunity, or are you just looking
Absolutely.
at wine as like, okay, I'm competing with other winemakers?
So this younger buyer cares far more about health, sustainability, even on value. I mean, the days of $2 chalk at Trader Joe's, that's not driving.
That's your cooking
any
wine. That's your cooking
It's
wine.
cooking wine. But it wouldn't resonate today anyway, because the goal isn't cheap
So are
value.
you going for healthier wines? I mean,
We
you're putting
absolutely.
calorie counts, or what do you do in that?
Calories, I don't know. And wine doesn't get labeled as a food product right now either. But I think as you look at sustainability, which is more than health, just glass bottles, it turns out, have a very big carbon footprint. They are very expensive to blow. They're very heavy. They're typically shipped. Most of it comes over from China. Then you got to ship to the home.
What are you using instead? Like
today we mostly use
Tetra
glass,
boxes?
but there are Tetra Paks, the cardboard boxes. There's bag in a box. There's new innovations in plastic bottles that are, believe it or not, this is a case plastic is much better for the environment when you look at the overall story.
Yeah.
So I think new packaging opportunities, I think, are going to be significant. The nature of the wine, I mean, preference for organic and other better sourced wine matters a lot for this younger generation. And even just there is a renaissance of wine innovation happening around wine. So ready to drink is a category that is growing right now. It's one of the categories
Isn't
that shows
that
a lot
called
of promise.
Beaujolais? What's ready to drink?
Ready to drink is typically pre-mixed cocktails, pre-mixed drinks.
Will you be getting into that?
So wine, it turns out, has
like wine coolers.
wine cocktails.
Oh, wine cocktails.
But
They
you
called
can-
them wine coolers
You
when
can
I
make
was
a
a kid.
lot of things with wine now, and this is where there's actual innovation happening. The beauty of wine, and this is a uniquely U.S. thing, is because of the three-tier system. Rest of the world isn't having this.
Three-tier being what?
So coming out of Prohibition,
Right?
the big change was the introduction of distributors, where those who make alcohol can only sell to distributors, and distributors
Right.
can only sell to retailers, and retailers can only sell to consumers.
Everyone
And
gets
it
their
was-
pound of
Everyone
flesh,
gets
so to
their
speak.
pound of flesh, but it intended to protect some of the control that some bad actors had at the time. And there's an interesting exception to the three-tier system that was made originally out of necessity, which is wineries typically had their tasting rooms. So if the three-tier system would mean the very winery that makes their wine couldn't actually sell to their own customers. They'd have
Unless
to sell.
they form a wine club.
Well, the
A
law
tasting-
actually says a winery is allowed to sell their own wine to their own customers.
Right.
And we are a registered winery, so we are a wine producer. So we're allowed to sell our own wine to our own customers, and it's a way that sort of doesn't have to go through the traditional three-tier system, but only wine. So what can you do with wine, and how can you get innovative with that as you start to get beyond just traditional wine?
Can you
And
give
we
us
see-
a taste of what's to come in terms of some of the, because I think that would be interesting
Sure.
to our viewers. What can we expect that is not existing today that you're
Sure.
mixing up in your laboratories?
So something we may or may not be launching soon,
Yes.
but has done well out there already is for example, a wine margarita.
I was about to say a wine margarita.
So it turns
That's
out
interesting.
and
That
wine,
sounds
wine
awful,
doesn't-
by the way.
phenomenal, phenomenal.
Is it tequila?
but-
No tequila.
No tequila.
Okay.
So, but wine can be made from really any fruit, and you can make wine from Mexican agave plant. And,
Okay, so
and,
wine margarita, wine daiquiri. What I mean is that, so the initial is, if you like tequila, just wait till you try our wine margarita.
that's right.
When would that be available?
I'm not announcing anything at this point, but I wouldn't be bringing it up at all if it weren't soon.
Okay. Well, that sounds interesting. So that does sound differentiated. Anything else you'd like to add in terms of what's on your radar you'd want to put on ours? Because I do think it is a space that is, on the one hand, so well known, and yet at the same time, you don't hear much that excites you in the category sometimes.
It's I think there's going to be product expansion. I think another problem that, for whatever reason, hasn't been solved is the notion of single serve.
That's a problem. Well, they have cans of wine.
They do, but they've never done well. Spritzers, things that have some bubbly to them, have done okay. But wine in a can has not succeeded. Wine in a box has had not nominal success in the U.S. Interestingly, overseas.
And you're going to change that?
Well, it gets back to the consumer. What's the problem? So the goal isn't how do we put wine in a different container. The goal is how do we solve a real consumer problem. And the problem is wine doesn't last. If you open a bottle of wine, you've got a finite amount of time, maybe 5 or 6 days,
right?
or it spoils. And a lot of people don't want more than a glass. So you've got to uncork, you've got to open an entire bottle of wine, 5+ glasses.
Well, wine on a can was supposed to solve that. Turns out we don't want it.
The problem is for a variety of consumer taste reasons, drinking wine out of a can just, it was too much. Wine doesn't come in cans.
So what are you going to do to resolve that problem?
We've got some really novel ways to solve that.
Do you want to give us a hint like you did with the wine margarita?
I think some of it is helping consumers. You give consumers choice. And when consumers have choice is an amazing thing. If you tell a consumer what's right for them,
this is very cryptic.
It.
Is this like new types of containers?
Sure.
Okay. Anything coming in the next year?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We've got a lot coming in the next year. But the idea ultimately is in a consumer acceptable way, if you just want a glass of wine, how could you get just a glass of wine without having to spoil an entire bottle? Why
so it won't be a can.
It won't be a can.
Okay.
But the consumer, you talk about why not this new generation, it's actually a big point of friction. I don't want to have to commit to an entire bottle of wine that I'm likely going to end up throwing away most of when I just want a glass of wine with dinner. Or just my best buds over and we just want to have a glass of wine each and that's it.
Or a party or a beach, depending on how you fill out the survey. Well, more to come. Thanks for joining us, Joe.
Thank you.